Hello, everyone. This is Niko and Gone. I'll be your host today. Thank you for tuning in again. Today we have Sam Ronan, who is running for Congress in Ohio's first district. Thank you for joining us, Sam. What's up?
Hey, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to be on your show. Um, Looking forward to this. Just got all my chores done, so I'm ready to go. Let's do this.
Yeah, I've interviewed a couple times now, and every time it's like I love talking to you in general, like in interviews and everything. I don't know, you're like very blatantly honest, I would say.
It gets me in trouble more often than not, but hey, if that's what it
Yeah,
works, then
it's a
that's what
good thing.
works.
I think it's a good thing. Okay, so the way that we're gonna start is that you will have about 5 minutes or so. I know you have like a long, maybe possibly explanation, which I watched you through the transition from you being a Democrat running for the chair of the Democratic Party, right?
Right.
And now being a Republican. But I think you really represent what a progressive is, and you can run with any party that is set up for you to run in a basis that they are like that's what their parties are for. So
Right.
I think you're just using your tools very smartly and or wisely is a better word. So yeah, if you want talk about that first.
Sure. So, for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Samuel Ronan, and as Nico just said, I did run for the DNC chair earlier last year. So, I was a Democrat. I ran for state representative prior to that, and prior to that, I was active duty Air Force. During the first government shutdown, that's when I realized our government was very corrupt and full of people that did not care about us, and that was my coming awake moment, if you will. So, fast forward to the DNC chair race. I saw the same issues that were permeating throughout the country. There's a lack of representation, a lack of adequate resource distribution, and zero transparency. It's just a game for the elites. And so I stepped onto the debate stage and I said, look, this is why you are losing. This is why we continue to lose. You rig primaries against people with an actual shot. You get rid of grassroots opportunism. You delegate all of your resources to the national or the state levels and leave these local parties to fend for themselves, and then they can't put forth a strong campaign because unfortunately money does talk. So instead, why don't we do the exact opposite and empower people in those local areas? And of course, the rest is history. I got destroyed and blacklisted on every mainstream media outlet. So after that, though,
Sorry,
I
in every what?
mainstream news outlet like
No,
CNN,
of course.
Fox, MSNBC, none of them wanted me on there, even though I had relevant speaking points and an actual platform with which to stand on. It's not like I was just some schmuck in their underwear in their grandmother's basement. Like I did the thing, I said the thing, and I backed it up, and they still didn't really want to talk to me. But as I said, it did allow me to build a platform, and it allowed me to build a following and a support structure. It also gave me the opportunity to found Our Voice USA, which is a nonprofit, which is basically trying to simplify the political process, literally down to your cell phone. Like you can go on your phone, whether it's an iPhone or Android, you can go to the Play Store, type in Our Voice USA, download that, put in your address, and see who is your currently elected officials in your area. That's not something that existed before. It existed piecemeal, or you had to do your own research in order to find it. But this is now literally a one touch of a button solution. And that's the point. We need to make politics simpler and easier, more accessible, not more difficult and convoluted. So then I started running for Congress. And of course, I ran as a Democrat. And of course, I had a lot of immediate, influx of donations and support, interviews, this, that, and the other. But the Democratic Party, again, hung me out to dry. And again, media just completely ignored me. And although I had plenty of independent support like you and Jimmy Dore and Tim Black, and it was phenomenal, and I am incredibly grateful, it was not enough to pierce that particular veil. And so what I noticed was that the same mistakes I made last year, which was not entirely being a Democrat, but not realizing that the constituency has a bias. I realized that my district is a 60-40 Republican district, and it's silly of me to try and go against that particular grain as a Democrat. Secondly, it's an completely overcrowded primary. There was at least 6 or 7 people running in that primary, and my voice was being drowned out regardless. So I thought to myself, if I want to make an effective campaign strategy and have the most likely way of winning, then I need to challenge the incumbent directly, which is something I said when I was running for the DNC chair. States like Mississippi and Louisiana, you don't have a choice other than to run as a Republican. And the thing is, 2/3 of all elected offices, all the way from dog catcher up to, well, the presidency, are controlled by Republicans. So it would make far more sense to infiltrate the massive party with left-leaning ideals or progressive ideals than it would be to try and run as a Democrat, where the bias and the propaganda is so vehemently against them. And that's what I've been doing. Running as a Republican, I've been espousing the same exact progressive platform. I have not changed a single syllable on what I believe in. And people have been receptive to it because people in general do want universal health care and education. They might not like those terms or those phrases, but the concept, the idea, not having to spend thousands upon thousands of dollars to get a certificate or degree, or thousands of dollars out of pocket to get an EpiPen or go to the doctor. This is something people in general agree with. You know, it's when we start talking about abortion and gun control is where the lines start to blur. But even then, if you talk about it from a position of legality and neutrality, and not I'm a liberal and I say this, or I'm a conservative and I say that, and you just talk about the facts, that the Second Amendment talks about well-regulated militia, and then talk about how people are able to just acquire firearms without any inhibition whatsoever, that's the problem. So we need to enact responsible measures so that people can be held accountable for their actions or misactions, and especially law enforcement. And when you talk about it like that, even a conservative tends to be receptive. So with running as a Republican, there has been very little transition in how I present myself, what I do, the things I say, or what I stand for. It's literally a label. And as you said, I don't really subscribe to any of the party system. I'm going to run under whatever office makes the most sense. If I move to, I don't know, New York City, and people figure that out and say, you know what, you should run for Congress in New York City as a Democrat, and I have enough support to do it, I will. I'll run for Congress in New York City as a Democrat. I do not care about jumping back and forth because the party is irrelevant, and our generation gets that. Our generation is taking a stand, and we are becoming more and more aggressive and fed up with this nonsense. I mean, our generation is actually in positions of power now. There are CEOs, there are elected people, there are people in the United Nations on Security Council seats, on major important governmental bodies, taking a stand and refusing to bend to the will of this corrupt elitist society that we found ourselves in, right? And it doesn't even take much, right? The Geneva Conventions and the Nuremberg trials have established a specific set of laws and rules that following orders is not an excuse to commit war crimes or crimes against humanity. And so whenever a national leader chooses to do so, and someone with authority tells them no, they have no choice but to acquiesce. So Donald Trump attacking Syria is a violation of international law. And the only thing preventing him from facing an international tribunal is the fact that the United States is the singular most powerful military in the world, bar none, and to antagonize the leader of that country invites war, which is exactly the path that we're taking. So running for Congress.
Plus the well, yeah, I was just gonna add 1 second. Plus the fact that he had the support of both Emmanuel Macron, the French president, and Theresa May, the Prime Minister of England. So exactly, it's a lot of.
Well, and then throw in the. I mean, there's a lot of allies that supported it, or at least didn't say no to it, and that's the problem. All of these countries are complicit with these violations. And my running for office is not for my own ego or well-being, because trust me, working 50, 60-hour weeks and then knocking on doors is not fun for anybody. And then I still have to buy groceries and maintain my military status and this, that, and the other, and find time to sleep and eat. So I'm not doing this for fame, glory, or ego. I'm doing this because we need a voice to stand up and step up to these creatures that are violating international law and the Constitution. That's why I'm doing this. So I hope that's not too much over 5 minutes.
Well, no, that was perfect. That was perfect. Because I actually in the beginning took about like 2 or 3 minutes. So I think that was actually like 6 minutes, so pretty on point, very on point. Okay, so now we are going to go with the quiz, which I think is something that is going to develop later. And as we do more interviews, it's gonna be, we're gonna come up with like some really cool clips for this. So my first question, you're gonna have 2 minutes, but same thing. Like right now it's 4:10. You'll have to 4:12, right?
Sure.
So or so. So what is a progressive?
Okay. So a broad question for a very broad topic, but my opinion on what a progressive is quite simple. Someone who actually fights for the common citizen. And I don't mean gets on Facebook and shares a meme or gets on Twitter and says Trump is an idiot. I mean actively engaging in the political processes. A progressive is someone who goes to the protest, then gathers signatures, then goes and knocks on doors and supports candidates running for office locally, who seek those candidates out and who try and spread that word. Progressives are people, men and women of all religions, faiths, and backgrounds who are taking a deliberate step to fixing our country. Everybody else is hot air, honestly. And to me, that's the difference between what an actual progressive is and people who claim to be progressive.
So in a sense of core values, because now you're a Republican progressive right now. So that's something that it's you can be a Democrat progressive, you can be an independent progressive, like as long as you share those values and that interest and passion for actually solving problems.
Sure. So
that
if you're looking for specific platform issues, yes. A progressive to me is someone who would support the ending of prohibition against marijuana, who would want law enforcement reform to actually make the justice and criminal justice system actually fair, and not just a ticket for young black men to go from their homes to prisons, right? Universal education, universal health care. These are platforms that clean energy initiatives, clean energy mass transit, focusing on the sciences and the arts instead of the military-industrial complex. Again, coming from a guy in the military, a progressive supports things that benefit the many, right? And without disenfranchising a section of the populace in turn. Unless, of course, they're the wealthy, they should pay more taxes, but that's not a minority that I'm particularly concerned with.
Okay. So that's it for now. Now, next question. So same exact thing. So you'll have 2 minutes. And I want to make emphasis. So income and wealth inequality. There you go.
So income and wealth inequality do have to be in the same sentence, but they are very different topics. Wealth inequality is the fact that people cannot get out of their income bracket, but that's also the income inequality, is that not only do certain races make less money than the dominant race, so us white folk will make more money than any other minority group just by default, but then white men will make more than white women by default. And that's a gender discrimination. So what we have with the inequality is sexism and racism and deliberate discrimination, although not written on paper in actuality. So in order to fix those things, we would have to implement true equitable reforms, which it sounds easier said than done. It sounds like, well, if you're a woman or a man doing this job, then you should get paid this much money, except in the private sector, there is no standard, there is no adherence. Whereas in the federal government, that does actually happen, where if you're a GS9, you get paid this, whether you're male, female, black, white, Christian, does not matter. That is your pay scale. That's the standard. And until we implement something along those lines in the civil sector, we're not going to get that. Same thing with wealth inequality. So long as there are loopholes in the tax bracket, or that there are constant regulations and laws being passed that benefit the wealthiest members of society and large business owners, you cannot truly progress past wherever you are in life. Last time this happened was, of course, the Great Depression. People cannot start new businesses because they cannot get new business loans. It costs well over $200,000-$400,000 to get equipment, materials, rent, space, and initial wages so that you can hire the employees, put the things together, and start whatever business it is you want to start. So people are disenfranchised from even leaving whatever they have. The competition of wages and jobs that exist are for the bottom of the barrel. People, like employees, are fighting over positions instead of employers fighting over new hires. And then there's the fact that people with brand new skills that just graduated college or I can't think of the word now. Trades, sorry, who graduate from trade schools, they're not getting hired because they don't have experience. But I'm sorry, they're 23 years old, $80,000 in debt. They don't have experience. There's no incentive to hire new people and train them to whatever industry standard. So the wealth and the labor and the wealth inequality are intertwined in that you would have to regulate the private sector to truly embody equity.
Okay. Now, education.
Education is an easier topic. For one,
from one topic to another one pretty quick.
Yeah.
So education, and take it whatever you want to take it.
Yeah. Education in America is a very outdated and extremely whitewashed, sensationalized program. We also don't fund it very well. I mean, that's why Oklahoma teachers, the entire state of Oklahoma, are protesting and walking out. What we need to do is reallocate funds to public education. We need universal education at the post, high school level, and then we need tuition debt forgiveness. Education should be the doorway to success, and it isn't in our country. Secondly, we need to end this stereotyping that unless you have a 4-year degree, you're stupid, because that's not true. Trades make oftentimes far more money than their baccalaureate counterparts. For instance, an electrician will likely make more money than an engineer. So our focus needs to be in the trades and making all colleges far more affordable by having a program in place that does not put our young people in debt for acquiring the skills and tools that they need to fulfill those jobs that are available in our economy.
Okay. Yeah, no, and you're absolutely right with the sense that, like, people who go to technical school, they are not in any way inferior, and sometimes they actually make a lot more money, like you said, than honestly, I think for anything, it's just about the drive of every single individual,
And if I may add to that, outside of answering the question, my little brother, he's an electrician apprentice, and he's I think 1 or 2 years away from his journeyman. The second he acquires his journeyman certificate, he's going to be making somewhere in the order of $28 to $30 an hour. He's going to be 21, 22 years old. I don't even make $28 an hour. And I have military experience, and I have a skill in a trade that I acquired as well. And I don't make $28 an hour, but he'll have the electrician degree or certificate working for 4 years, and all of a sudden.
It makes perfect sense, because back in the day, before the Industrial Revolution, it was all about artisans, which is essentially all trades work, and that was where the real money was. Like the secret society, the Freemasons, and like all of this, they all came from that, because they made so much money, because they emphasized in a piano. They would like make the piano, and it would be the most beautiful piano you would ever see, and that was their one skill. So yeah, like trade works, it can be, generic if you think about it that way, but if you really get into it, you can be the best individual piano maker in the world. Like that will be something that will make you millions of dollars in the future, something that you would never even think of with a like a normal
business degree.
It's all about the mentality
that allows you to be a shift supervisor at Walmart or something.
Yeah. But okay, next one. So let's do women's rights. We got 2 minutes for that.
I don't know if two minutes is enough for that, but I will try and bring it down to a 2-minute talking point. Women's rights, I don't even understand how this is even still an issue. It's the year 2018, and women in the United States of America are still treated as second-class citizens. They are expected to be homemakers. They are expected to be this, shape, color, form, whatever. And it just does not make any sense. Then if they are in the workplace, they are expected to adhere to a 1950s standard, and that's abysmal. Secondly, women are being pushed out of the STEM industries. They are being treated as if they're inferior. How could a woman possibly be a computer scientist? Let me give you a history lesson. The only reason why we have Bluetooth and Wi-Fi is because of a woman who, by the way, was also a Hollywood actress. Like, it's just mind-boggling. I can't remember her name. Unfortunately, please Google that real quick, because this woman deserves to be on the $5, $10, $20, $100 bill for all I care. And that's another thing. Women are not represented in anything meaningful in our historical or our national history. So going back to other issues, I mean, women's body autonomy, that is continuously attacked. And guess who's on those boards? White old men. Like, abortion is a controversial topic, but it's one that has to do with the woman deciding what to do with her body in terms of a medical procedure that her faith and belief may or may not align with yours. Like, here's the thing. You can be a Christian and still think abortion is okay. Just because somebody else is a Christian and might think abortion is murder does not mean you do. And that's violation of individual rights. So let's go back even further. The income inequality. Any woman will make more than me doing the same exact job. That's just a fact. And it's disgusting, but it's a fact. Now take it a step further. A black woman will always make less than a white woman. A Hispanic woman will make even less than a black woman. And God forbid you're any other race, because you're going to be on the bottom of the totem pole. So women just,
running out of time, but keep going.
We need more women in office. We need more women in CEOs. We need more women in STEM. We need more women outside of the traditional women's roles, because they bring so much to the table. And I don't even like using the word they. Women are a part of society, and they need to be treated as the equals that they are.
Yep. Okay. So next one we'll go with healthcare and Big Pharma.
Oh, excellent. So Big Pharma needs to be dismantled. I mean, quite frankly, I understand the need to develop and research pharmaceuticals, and that there's all sorts of mistrust with the government and conspiracy that the government just, does medical experiments on their citizens, mostly because that has been proven time and time again. But there has to be some sort of...
Like frozen for a second.
World War II, most black enlistees were experimented on to see if certain vaccinations or chemical counter agents would actually work. So what would happen is they would gas or infect the black enlisted men and then try and treat them. And if they died, they died. And they were told it was just standard procedure. Now, that's just one example. This isn't even going into what's happening recently. But to that point, the pharmaceutical industry needs massively regulated, and honestly down to the point where I would say pharmaceutical industries should not be allowed to profit more than 10% over the cost of manufacture, because this is disgusting. When Martin Shkreli, whatever the hell his name is, took medicine,
7,000%.
Right, and then jacked it up 5,000%. That is reprehensible. That in itself should be a crime against humanity. Now, healthcare in general, the argument is universal healthcare can't be funded. Where's the money going to come from? We already have the money. If you took Medicare and just applied it to the operational costs and wages of hospitals and the medical industry in this country, it would already be covered in most cases with minimal out-of-pocket expenses at best. And that's on my website. I won't go into much more detail than that. Suffice to say, health insurance companies are a scam, a deliberate scam. And the way that we analyze the cost and allocate the cost for healthcare in this country is convoluted ever since the Healthcare Something Act was passed by the Nixon administration and allowed healthcare to be profited upon.
Yeah, like I'm sure that you can pay for healthcare just by canceling like 1 or 2 Pentagon contracts, like just 1 or 2, and like that's it.
Well, you take any other developed country, and this isn't, my question or the answer to the question. This is just following up on the discussion. Every other developed country in the world does that. Like, you pay your taxes; those taxes pay the medical professionals and the nurses and the janitors that work at the hospital, and it keeps the hospital's lights on and it keeps their equipment up to date. Your tax dollars can do that. and they do. $1 trillion is enough. And that's, I mean, actually, we're at $1.1 trillion. And even so, let's just say there was a requirement for out of pocket, just to, you know, because maybe whatever. All of the math that I've done, all of the numbers that I've crunched, at most, you're paying $25, $50, $100 out of pocket to get cancer treatment, right? Not hundreds of thousands of dollars, certainly not $1 million to give birth, like $25 out of pocket. And you know what, even if it was $200 out of pocket to go through cancer treatment, I would pay that in a heartbeat without batting an eyelash. It's disgusting what our country has become with healthcare.
Yeah, and I like the fact that you were talking about taxes paying for this, because lately, I don't know, I've been getting really confused with the idea of how people have been pushing for modern monetary theory, just because it's the way that everything works right now. And well, corruption is the way that everything works right now.
Exactly.
Like, that doesn't mean that it's like a good thing, you know, like that.
Hey,
okay, so that's how it works right now. Scratch it, throw it around, like throw it aside, and let's actually do something that works.
I mean, why have money at all, right? Let's just get rid of money and let's just all do work and go to school and seize the means of production, because that's what we should be doing. Let's just go Star Trek. That's just not a reality. I could, if I got elected, if I become Congressman Ronan and I get onto the House floor and I talk about MMT, all of a sudden it becomes relevant. All of a sudden I could talk about it. But as a candidate, I'm just shooting for the moon at that point. And these MMT proponents, they do not understand that reality, because quite frankly, money is already a fabrication. It doesn't matter how you try and justify it. MMT is the way money works. Exactly, because money is fake. It doesn't exist. It's not real. It's a manufactured construct of humanity. The only thing that is real is the materials our stuff is made out of, and the real labor and time it takes to manufacture and create it. That's
every time that someone tries to explain to me what modern monetary theory is, all I hear is fracture banking. It's essentially just that. You take money from your central bank, then you pass it on through, you know, like your secret tunnels. You pass it through to your typical banks, and then that's how money gets into the system.
It's not
and
even
then
that. And then
request from the treasury, like blah blah blah. But
MMT literally states money does not exist until it is written into existence. So that no matter what the taxes are, no matter how the budget is formulated, none of that money exists, completely disregarding taxes. None of that money exists until it gets signed into law. That's MMT's argument, which reaffirms the statement that money is fake and shouldn't exist in the first place. But unfortunately, humanity has not evolved as just in general, as a species. We have not evolved to the point where we can handle that concept. I mean, picture, if you will, going to the grocery store, filling up your grocery cart, going through the checkout line solely for the sake of logistics, putting that stuff in a bag and putting it in your car. No money, no transaction, just simply, this is what I've taken out of your inventory. I go through the process so that you can remove it from your inventory and take statistics off of that information and then leave. Could you picture that? Could you even fathom that as a reality? Nobody can think about that. That's what MMT is basically arguing, is that money does not exist until it's written into existence. Therefore, money isn't real anyway. So why bother with it? And unfortunately, that's why taxes and wages and all this other stuff exist. It's because we need quantifiable measures. We are a species that has to touch it. Sorry, and I know we're going off topic here. It really frustrates me.
And I I really don't mind like this extra 3 or 4 minutes about like this important issue, because I think it's like something to bring about, because actually the idea of modern monetary theory just makes taxes and it makes the economy just really confusing for the average person, which it shouldn't be that way. It's like, the way I look at it is, you pay taxes and you get your benefits, period. If if there's not enough money, you raise taxes a little bit. If there's more than enough money, then you decrease them a little bit. It's all up to government. Is a group of people that are elected to solve society's problems. That is it, period. And then you have that group of people coming up with, a budget, like how much money do we need to solve people's problems, and that happens every whatever year, whenever Congress exactly sets up the budget. And then that's just the way that it should be working, without this central bank apparatus, or maybe with it. But I believe that if there is a central bank, it has to be entirely public, not like it is right now, that it's just like shady as shit. And then like it's you have, and I would argue it's even treasonous, because you have foreign bankers controlling the Federal Reserve. So that in itself it's treason, and I'm saying that as a foreigner.
and my argument isn't that let's just get rid of taxes and abolish the U.S. dollar. My point is MMT may very well exactly be how our fiat currency system works, that it is written into existence, but the way it operates is still through this balancing of an equation based on this presumption that taxes are what actually fund spending. And if that's the case, if that's how our budget and our economy works, is off of this taxation, off of this expenditure of taking dollars and cents and putting it into some place so that others can pull it out and put it back in, then you have to work within the construct that exists. And if we are at a, 1.1 trillion trade deficit, if we legalize marijuana and we could tax it at 20%, and hemp and all this other stuff, we could generate over $1.5 trillion per yield, per harvest. And all of a sudden we have an extra $1.5 trillion to add to the budget, to our federal income. And then there's all sorts of other ways, like corporate welfare, financial transaction taxes, offshore bank account tax evasion, regular tax evasion, right? The religious it's not the right word, a religious immunity, but they don't have to pay taxes. If you got rid of all that crap, that's an additional $3 trillion. So people are like, well, where's all this money coming from? I don't know. You ask me, why are we giving $1.5 trillion away and not accounting for it on the Federal Reserve? That's where the made up money comes into play. $1.5 trillion goes to corporations in the form of corporate welfare. But if you go online to the federalbudget.gov website, it's nowhere to be accounted for, but it is being spent. That's where MMT likes to argue. See, look, we are just spending money out of the blue. So why don't we have all this and the other? It's like, that's a damn good question. But it's because some things are allocated and some things are not. So the question really isn't, is MMT the right way or is taxes the right way? It's how do we put all this together so that it's transparent, people can understand it, and then do something about it. And I don't care which way we do.
The point of this right now, the way that it's working, I think the point of it is for it to not be transparent, so they can spend the money in whatever ways they want and make it as confusing as possible to, like you're saying, like sometimes even spending money twice, or not really spending money twice, but the fact that they
don't
account. It's kind of like how endowments work. Like you have a certain amount of money, like Harvard, they have an endowment, but they don't spend that ever. What they do is just keep accumulating it, and based on how much they have, they can loan. And so then they take that loan, and then they're basically making money out of making a building, because they get a new donation. They say, bank, I have this, so give me double. I'll spend it here, and then through interest and blah blah blah, they basically double their money, but they never really spent anything.
Exactly.
And that is the trick. The magic.
That's going back into what happened to Enron, but now we're off topic. So
yeah, okay, yeah. Let's just we got into this too much, but I thought it was cool. Okay, so now the next one will be clean energy. Oh, this one is cool because it's very, very I think it's gonna be a key player in your particular election, because it's like something that us progressives can attract Republicans with, which is jobs. But look at this. So it's clean energy and the environment, and so obviously, like, you can talk about like the transition to renewable energy and like how it's going to save the environment while at the same time creating jobs.
Sure. So, I mean, they do go hand in hand, clean energy and saving the environment. For one, depleting our own natural resources is asinine. I don't understand where that justification even exists. If you chop down all of our trees, which produce the air we breathe, if you poison all of our waters and all of our land, we can't eat and we can't drink and we die. And the proof of that is Flint, Michigan. Their water is poisoned because they aren't taking care of it. Anyway, so with clean energy and the environment.
Go on.
Yeah, with clean energy and the environment, solar, wind, hydro power, all these things, thorium, hydrogen, all these technologies exist, and they can revolutionize literally any industry. Legalizing hemp and marijuana would replace the lumber industry in its entirety, and that's not a bad thing. All we need to do is allow these companies 6 months, a year, 2 years to transition out of whatever it is they're already doing. Give them a little bit of an incentive. Like, I don't give a damn. I will pay them. I honestly, if I was in Congress and I was writing legislation, I would honestly say, I will pay you your current standing to change from lumber to hemp, to change from oil to thorium, to change from, I don't know, petroleum-based manufacturing to thorium-based. Like, I will pay you to do this if you just stop destroying our environment and the land that we actually live on. So yes, it does create jobs. Furthermore, when you talk about mass transit systems and making them clean energy to begin with, you're creating a massive industry requirement and demand that'll have skilled labor positions, unskilled labor positions, and then of course degreed positions, right? Because you need physicists and engineers to come up with this crap. So you just generate massive amounts of opportunity for this entire country to rebuild itself, like we did in World War II with the highway system.
Yeah. So okay, the next one will be, this one's tough because it's just so sad to even talk about. But okay, private prisons.
Yeah. So, but I don't even need 2 minutes. Private prisons. Why the hell are prisons private at all? Like, they should be illegal. That should be banned. That should be removed. That, like, honestly, that is all that needs to be said. Private prisons are an affront to democracy and our Constitution. They're just, they do not need to exist.
When actually, could you repeat that, because I think it froze. I couldn't really hear you. What you said.
Samuel Ronan state unequivocally that private prisons are an affront to freedom, justice, and democracy, and have no business existing whatsoever. That's all that needs to be said about private prisons.
When Chris Hedges talks about the what's the way he says there's a authoritative, you know, the way he just, okay, all right, I'm getting on another tangent, but basically that makes me think of Chris Hedges' interpretation of the regime.
Yeah,
of the
it's an authoritarian state. I mean, the lobbying industry of the private the lobbyists of the private prison industry are the reason why young black men are going to prison for no damn reason whatsoever, and why marijuana is still being treated as or why prohibition against marijuana is still in place, because it's an easy thing to put people in jail for.
Yep. Okay. So next one will be, and this is one that you are very familiar with, wars for profit.
Oh, that's another thing. Like the military-industrial complex. That is, I may be wrong, and I freely admit that I might be wrong about what I'm about to say. Prior to World War II, I do not believe that there were industries in place that worked around the clock, year round, even in peacetime, to develop weapons of war. There were gun manufacturers and there were bullet manufacturers, because hunting and recreational shooting has always existed in this country. But true weapons of war, bazookas, tanks, trains, planes, and automobiles, right, that are deliberately designed for warfare, I do not believe existed prior to World War II. And post-World War II, we've always been in a state of war. So it allowed the military-industrial complex to stay in position. But before that, the aluminum industry, the tire industry, automotive industries, they would be commissioned by the federal government and paid, I believe, but to transition into, instead of building a Model T Ford, to build a tank, instead of building, you know, a passenger airplane, to build a fighter jet. And I think we need to go back to that. Now, of course, that is, there's so many hands in that particular pot. You can't even talk about one industry over the other. But suffice to say, the military industrial complex is one of the primary reasons why we are manufacturing wars. And make no mistake, what's happening in Syria and the Middle East is manufactured. It is not an accident that Islamic extremism exists. And I hate that word, because they are these terrorists are to Islam what the KKK is to Christianity.
Can you say that again?
Yeah. Islam.
Coincidence that Islam.
Yeah, it's disgusting, because these terrorists, ISIS, is to Islam what the KKK is and the Aryan Brotherhood and Nazis are to Christianity. There is no correlation. Those religions are peaceful religions. And these people are extremists that are holding on to something that people can relate to pursue their propaganda. Just like in the United States, support the troops is literally to desensitize the population and shame them into supporting the war effort, because you can be against a war, but you can't be against Johnny who's being sent to war. So all of this is just disgusting, coming from a family of enlisted veterans.
Yeah, and I agree with you in the sense of how it's desensitizing people, because I even to a certain degree, obviously, like I feel bad for the ISIS fighters themselves. Like in most cases, they're probably just orphans who, you know, grew up in a random Libyan town, and they just got picked up, or in Iraq, they just got picked up. They were given a ton of drugs, and then they were just told what to do. Honestly, they were probably raped. They also went through a lot of situations. Or even if you go before to the Taliban, they were brainwashed by to fight the communists. But the ones today, like it's just very I don't know. I think it's
no, yeah, the radicalization is true.
Radical,
and even in America, it's happening. All these gun nuts, the NRA, Fox News, which is now supposed to be considered an entertainment channel instead of news network. You take all of these institutions, the rise of Nazism and white supremacy, or the resurgence of it, I guess, in our country. I mean, the white rage against still being number one, but somehow feeling threatened because minorities are getting equal treatment. Like, the radicalization of the poor and racist white American is just as disgusting and disturbing as, like you said, the children of war crimes in the Middle East. Like you said, they're orphans. Well, what do you expect? You just glassed a city, and the only survivors were children and people who were damaged. And then we've been at war for 18 years. People who were born in 2001, whose parents were in the military and are now retiring, can themselves enlist and fight in the same exact war. We've bred a generation of war fighters for the same exact war, and the enemy, quote unquote, these terrorists, are the same generation who lost their families and are fighting for their freedom and defense too. Now, granted, I'm not defending terrorism. What I am saying is that the radicalization that exists is being perpetuated by our involvement in the region.
Yeah, like for example, if the U.S. hadn't bombed Iraq, there would be no ISIS. Like, it's just kind of
those things. Saddam Hussein, yeah, he was a horrible human being. No argument there. But
and same goes to Assad. Same goes to Assad. Like, they are terrible dictators, but that doesn't mean that we should take Al Qaeda instead. You know, that doesn't mean that we should take the Taliban instead, because although they restrict political freedoms, they allow for economic and religious and social freedoms, which the other ones don't. So it's just it's you know, pick your evil, but in that case, I think it's a lot more clear. You know what I'm saying?
Well, that, and you're attacking a sovereign nation. It's just
that point itself. That point itself, like, that's, you're breaking international law. But okay, so we any last thought on that?
Oh, there's plenty, but no, we got to move on.
Yeah. I mean, I know we could talk about this for hours, but okay. Next one will be racial justice. It's 45.
So with racial justice, again, it's 2018. We have ended slavery. We have ended Jim Crow. We have ended segregation, and we are still treating young black men like criminals. We're treating them like monsters. And okay, let's not even go on that part, right? Black Lives Matter is the new civil rights movement. Okay, let's not even go there. Colin Kaepernick taking a knee for all of the police killings of young black men. Let's not even take it to that level. Let's take it to the simple fact that predominantly black neighborhoods are still undervalued compared to their white suburban counterparts. Let's take it another step further. If you or I were to get a loan and we had the same exact credit score, we would get the same interest rate. But if you were black, or if I were black and we had the same exact credit score, the black person would get a higher interest rate on that loan. Let's talk about the systemic racism that's still intrinsically apparent and involved in our economics. Let's take, for example, that hiring practices, although state on paper that they cannot be discriminatory based on race, religion, gender, what have you, I find it quite telling that there's very few black people in the tech industry. I find it very telling that there's very few black women getting hired in literally anything that isn't what's considered stereotypical black women jobs, right? Like nursing is about the only place where, yeah, or government jobs, right?
For example, like but actually high ranking,
right?
Like,
well, I mean, it still makes the news. Like, unfortunately, it still makes the news. Like right now, there's a brigadier general being nominated who happens to be a black female. Then that's making the news because it's the first time that's ever happened. And it's the military. Like our racism is so heavily ingrained in our economy and our history and in the institutions that drive the functions of our country that it needs a massive overhaul. And let's not even get started on the justice system. Let's not even get started on policing in this country, because every black male that isn't wearing a suit is treated as a criminal. And even then, they still get mistreated by police. It's like, yeah, you can't win. And that's the problem. And honestly, you can see whatever you want about these articles saying that the KKK has infiltrated law enforcement. I'll even say that I believe that. Then we need to purge our law enforcement and ensure that there is no affiliation or association with racism. That there needs to be an actual social justice quiz. And if you fail it, you can't be a cop because you are intrinsically biased to turn a blind eye to white criminals as opposed to potentially black criminals. Again, why are white male mass shooters taken into custody, given Burger King, and treated humanely, but a black man with his hands in his pockets, fucking at Starbucks, getting arrested?
Yeah. But sorry, okay, we went on next minute. No. That was good. Okay, the last one. This is the last one. It will be on LGBT rights.
Same thing. It's 2018. And we have to talk about women's rights, Islamic rights, civil rights, and now we have to add LGBT rights. And we may I know we didn't, but the point is, like, specifically, why are we still talking about social justice? Why are we talking about having to treat human beings, Americans, with respect and dignity? I don't get it. I really don't get it. And what's worse is that even within the LGBTQAI community, there is discrimination within them. Like the bisexual section of it gets ridiculed by either the lesbian or the gay for not choosing. And it's like that you can't attack one another. You just can't do that. And it's just like interracial couples saying that it's not right for a man and a man to get married. Like, how are you guys doing this to each other? Why the oppression that happens from within the oppressed groups, I don't understand it. But again, it's systemic. If you're For instance, marriage is a government arrangement. It's no longer religious in context, because if that were the case, you and I could get married right now and say we're married and just call it that. But on paper, we would not be married because we didn't pay the legal fee and have a state-appointed judge ratify it. Marriage is a government program. It's no longer religious. So to make a religious argument about a government program is idiotic and unconstitutional. So just on that basis alone, that premise alone, it's discrimination. I don't give a damn if you're a private business owner or not. You don't have the right to discriminate. You just don't. Like, I'm sorry, you don't. And
it's exactly the same that if someone who is black comes in and you're like, nah, get out. It's essentially the same exact thing. You're just looking at one thing about the person and you're saying no. All of the ones that are kind of like you, just no. Like race or sexual orientation or country of origin, whatever it is. It's just one characteristic and then just rolling them out. So yeah, no, totally right. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the quiz. Hope you liked it. And,
no, I think it's good.
Okay, so what was that?
I think the quiz is a good idea. It allows structure for an interview, and like you said, it'll allow people to, once you, of course, establish it, it'll allow people to research candidates on the issues, and there's no way for the candidate to say, oh, I didn't say that. It's like, yes, the hell you did. Like,
yeah, and also something that I'll do later, like I'm trying to like make it more understandable for people in the description, because this is going to be a very long video, so if in the format, and this is for everyone watching too, in the format, if I later add in, education, we talked from this second to that second, so it's easier for people to look at the long video and then, okay, I'm actually only interested in these two topics, so then I'll just spend 10 minutes instead of 40,
Well, and we can talk offline on this, but video editing is actually not particularly that difficult, and there is plenty of free software that allow you to break those videos up. But that's an offline conversation that we can have.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so now your ending, your conclusions, your message.
My message is quite simple, folks. I'm running for Congress because we need representation of actual people. I don't claim to have all the answers. I don't even claim to have all the right answers. What I am claiming and what I am telling you emphatically, whether you are a Democrat or a Republican, or independent or any of the other affiliations, voting for me gives you a 1,000% greater chance of being represented in Congress and having your values represented than any of the incumbents currently in there. All right? What we have is a problem of corruption and self-serving behavior in Congress and in most elected positions. We don't have people that actually listen to the constituency. If you disagree with a policy issue and you have actual facts and an actual stance that we can debate back and forth on, I will have that debate with you because I respect you as an equal, as a peer. And that's something that just doesn't exist in government anymore. That's what we need. So all of these questions that I answered today, they're on my website, www.ronanforcongress.com. I have Twitter, Ronan for the number 4 progress, and then I'm on Facebook as well, Ronan FOR Congress. Talk to me, reach out to me, spread the word. It does not matter what your political affiliation is. What matters is the person that you're voting for actually going to give a damn about you. And at that point, you need to find out if the answer is yes or no. If the answer is yes, then you have to worry about, is there another one? And if there isn't, then just stop right there. Why do we need to nitpick the candidate? If they agree, or if you agree with most of their stuff anyway, and there's, it's 25% that you disagree with, why would you vote for the person that is going to go out of their way to harm you for the 25% of the things you do agree with? Our politics has become a coin toss, and that is just not the way things are. There are going to be things you agree with me, and there are going to be things that you disagree with me on, but do not let that determine the fate of the country by allowing incumbents who go out of their way to sell you out to the lowest bidder, mind you, than someone who actually has a vested interest in the future of this country. I am a millennial. I am a veteran. I am an immigrant, and I'm an American. and I am running for Congress to represent all of us to the best of my ability. And I appreciate your support and your vote in this upcoming May 8th primary.
All right, man. Well, it was great having you. And all of your information is in the description for people watching. Your website, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, everything. And that's it for today. Thanks so much, man. I'll hope to have you soon. And yeah, best of luck, and we'll stay in contact. All right.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Peace out. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Have a good day.